Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm your boy Retro Bliss, and you are on Retro Bliss Rewind podcast. And we got a special show tonight. We're going to talk about the new 400 Mini by Atari. And without further ado, I'm just going to bring the panel on. Mike from Mike's Gaming Gala. We got Brian from BD RetroMods, and my very, very, very special guest, the Ballistic Coffee Boy, Brian. What's up, Brian?
Pretty good. How are you guys?
I'm living the dream, brother.
Good.
What's going on?
I have a little.
Or the other Brian.
Oh no!
Yeah, you're gonna have to say BCB for.
I'm gonna call you Ballistic from now on. Ballistic Coffee Boy.
I have a little problem. So we're talking about the 400 Mini today. I got my 400 Mini, but I accidentally spilled some water on it, and it grew. So
You know what's funny?
I don't know what's going on here.
I actually have mine in the corner. If I was your age, I could go grab it, but I'm too old.
Oh, there you go.
It's over there.
But if anybody's wondering what that comparison is,
Yeah, I'm sure if anybody's been
he's
watching,
tiny.
there are a number of reviews out there, and people are kind of showing those in the reviews. I don't have a 400. I have an 800 XL, so I don't really have much of a thing to compare to. So I didn't pre-order mine at all, and I wasn't going to order one at all. I'm like, you know what, and you guys know, at some point you got to kind of start putting the brakes on some of this stuff. There's so many things that come out. But then I saw John from Gen X Grown Up. I saw his review, and I was like,
Which was a great review.
it was a great review, and dude, I got to get this thing. So I pulled the trigger and I got it, and I got it last week, and I started adding games to it, and I've been playing around with it, and man, for me, I mean, it's got some issues. It's got some issues. We'll be talking about that tonight, but
It's not perfect. Yeah.
but I think that over time that some of these issues might be fixed with like future firmware updates or with hacks or whatever. What do you guys think?
I was going to say, Mike, I just wanted to add, when you first, and this isn't what you just asked, but when you were holding the 400 Mini and the 400, it looked like the Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah. Or
Like
this
the
is the
Atari.
Millennium Falcon docking onto the back of the Star Destroyer.
Right. Anyway, I had to say that. But
Yeah, I don't think it's perfect. I don't think any of these systems are perfect. My position on just in general these mini consoles is that ones like Atari does, sorry, BCP, but where they've got like 10, and it's like this one now has 80 games and the other one had 60 games, but it's like,
the flashbacks, yeah.
Yeah, the flashbacks, right? Like they don't really need them. But for something like this, I know for a fact, like we're all retro gaming geeks, and I imagine most of the people watching tonight are. But there are the vast majority of people probably haven't played any Atari 8-bit games. So this is a good introduction for something like that. Yeah, and I've got the Commodore 64 one too. I've got the
okay, I'll just show the Amiga one too while we're at it.
So and all of these are all good examples of ones that most people probably haven't played the games on them. So as an introduction to that, I really like it, and I like the fact that it doesn't require any additional firmware or anything to be able to plug in a USB and play games. Now, does it play them all perfectly? We'll talk about that. I do have some issues with the joystick. I appreciate what they tried to do. But overall, I'd say I'm not upset that I bought it. I do like this. It looks really cool at the very least, even if it's just going to sit on your shelf. It looks awesome. But yeah, what about you two? You two down there, what do you think?
I know that most people think I'm going to love everything because it's Atari, and that's halfway true. I mean, you have your fans out there that like what they like, and I mean, of course, I'll defend Atari to the grave. I'm one of those people, but I try to take myself out of it a little bit, right? It's hard to, but I do it. And nothing's perfect, as you said. This is kind of the same kind of feeling I had about the 2600 plus. It may not have been what hardcore gamer fans wanted, but it's what the mass public wanted for that price point.
It's a more palatable thing for the average consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. And most of it is the price point. I hate to say that, but I've been working for like 30 something years now in business, and it's a price point. They have to get it down to 100 something dollars just so people will buy it. And then at that point, they have to look at their materials and the software and what can they do. And, to make money off of it, from a business standpoint, with the issues I had with the 400 mini setting it up, the only issue that I really had is Mule wouldn't work for me, and
Okay.
I couldn't get Mule to work. And I also didn't like how the user manual did not come with it. This was brought to my attention by my friends Into the Vertical Blank, and I actually posted that on one of my Atari newsletters I had. Their actual manual is like 60 pages long. It tells you how to add your own ROMs. It tells you how to do firmware updates. This was essential for that to be in the box, I believe. So just because of that and the fact I couldn't run a game or two that well, I actually in my first impressions, I gave it an A-. But that's before I dug deeper, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be lower, right? But I still really like it for the price. I really like it.
Yeah, I mean, if we're given letter grades, my overall impression has been a B.
Yeah, that's now. Yeah,
that's nothing to scoff at. But I know Brian and we were talking a little in the pre-production thing. He's got some thoughts on, and I agree that maybe they tried to do too much, and that's what's disappointing us. Brian, why don't you talk a bit about that?
I was gonna say overall, I mean, there's no question like the build quality of this. I mean, that's something where Retro Games, who manufactured these, because they manufactured them. And I think Play On helped develop them or whatever. The same group that did the 2600 plus, and all their mini consoles have been very well designed. They're very solid for being a plastic unit.
And really high quality molds.
And high quality molds. And, what I will say, given with that, I think was a nice touch is, even the cables themselves, match.
I really liked that.
Match the color.
That was nice.
Yeah. So that's a nice touch. Now,
I wish this was an SD card slot, so I didn't have to have a big key sticking out of it, but.
Right. Where with that, and that would be my thing. An SD card slot would have been great, though. At the end of the day, I'm not.
It does the same thing.
The fact they at least gave us a port specifically for it back here, I'm cool with it. But again, the same complaint I had with the 2600 plus, though. No power brick. They expect you to have the power brick again.
No power brick, and like BCB mentioned, no manual. Like these are things that should be just.
Yeah. I mean, they give you like a little quick start guide, but it's
not a manual.
It's
like scan this. It's like the Happy Meal that just has a QR code on the side. It's like that's not a Happy Meal. You got to steal mom's phone to just.
It's a slightly disappointing bitter meal, is what it is.
Yes.
Right?
Well, Brian.
But the ballistics point, though, I mean, I had to do digging for it today because I'm like. Why is half of my Atari 5200 ROMs not working? Which again, we'll get into that later. But it took me going to that manual to see, that's why they're not working. I mean? Right. And, so that's a little, there. But I mean, I get what they're trying to do, but again, maybe we'll talk later, but I'll bring it up now too. It's just, I think they promised on it, just like they did with the 2600 plus. It's just that at the end of the day, again, no one's going to question the 2600 plus is a good console for what it is, but it had a lot of 7800 issues right out of the bat, and even now it still has them if you've not gone on Atari Age forums and downloaded firmware updates, which are not technically publicly available yet.
You require a PC, so if you're Mac guy, you're screwed.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I feel like they like overpromised on this. And I think if they would have just said this plays Atari, 8-bit computer games, sweet. But when they said, "Oh, this is going to play 5200," I think that's where it just gets a little rough. And again, we can go in more details on that.
Hey, Brian,
later.
I was going to ask you if you could hold that up again. The
Yeah.
Mini. I was going to say one of my points that really bothered me was the cartridge slot and on the top. If that were really open,
Right.
it's the same size as our cartridge.
It
We
is.
could have put carts in there.
You could technically fit it.
Mm-hmm.
It could
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah.
I don't know
Actually,
how much space is left, but it
Mr.
could have been made a
Postal
little
of this,
bigger, right?
you could barely fit it in there.
Right. So
Yeah.
I feel like it could have been that can be a miss because
That
I feel
would
like
have
we
been
need a new way to play these old games in a.
Yeah, that would have been an added cost though as well for sure.
I know. Yeah.
But no, to your point though, I mean, without a doubt. But again, I know we're a whole different audience than what these are normally meant for.
Audience.
But you know what though? You know what? I'll comment on that because at this point, anybody that's selling stuff like this shouldn't be kidding themselves. Their number one audience is guys like us.
I agree with that, and the reason is because I said this on the program today because I live streamed games today. I didn't have a specific game. I wanted to just kind of scroll through and go through games that I actually added to it. If you're just buying it for the 25 games on there at the $120 price point, I wouldn't do it. You want to buy it to add the games and to go through that process. So I agree with Mike on that.
And I agree with you on that too, because I mean, because we talked on this on some past podcasts. At the end of the day, I would love to have a console where I can play my 5200 cartridges again. I can play my Atari computer cartridges.
Yeah,
again.
proper FPGA with rebuilt controllers and yeah.
I would love to have it, but back to Ballistic's point, they're trying to keep it at a certain price point because they want to try to appeal to as many folks as they can. So, because again, they get to that level, like what we want, you're probably talking a $250, $300 console, easy, and don't know how. I mean, of course, we would all buy it, but I don't know outside of that.
But we all have issues,
right?
I mean, here's the thing about me and Atari is I have to buy it for the channel. That's what I tell myself anyway. So anything Atari has out, I try to buy it.
Addiction has a way of justifying itself, BCB.
Oh, I'm a therapist, an addiction therapist, actually.
Yeah.
I have a lot of experience in that area. Yes.
But to Phil's point, though, the one thing I will say, and this is my own opinion, you guys might have different opinions on this, is just when I compare this to the other minis that Retro Games has made, I do feel that the 400 mini probably was the weaker lineup of any of these. Like when you think about
pre-installed games, I'd agree.
When you talk about the pre-installed games, it is kind of disappointing when you saw what some of the stuff's there. Where I felt like, and that's where I started grinding my wheels. Today, just thinking, I'm like, did Atari really not have the rights to that many Atari computer games? And I don't think they do. I really don't think they do.
Atari went through some dark days in the early 2000s, late 90s, where they lost the rights to a lot of their stuff.
Well, they sold everything just to survive, I think.
Yeah.
So they sold off their arcade rights. They sold off other companies. And now they're buying them back, which kind of reminds me of in college and for the first time in my early 20s, how I would pawn my stuff for quick money and then buy it again, right? Or like the Nintendo I had as a 13-year-old, I sold and whatever, and now I'm buying it again for more money. That's what that reminds me of, right?
Well, and they did.
Who wants to get booted from the chat?
If he were here, he'd get booted from the chat.
I'll tell you what, Poe just rips that Band-Aid every Tuesday.
I know, man. I need therapy, but I don't know. Ballistic can't give me the therapy I need. That's the problem.
One of his new favorites is to say that Mr. Turtle is like my favorite homebrew game for the Intellivision.
But when you think about that, I do think they bought a decent amount of it back. But the thing
they got a chunk of it. Yeah.
But it's just when you think about the games that you play on the regular Atari 8-bit machines, and it's just like and I gravitate to myself, I'm just like, oh, wait a minute. Namco owns that. They don't have the rights anymore. Oh,
not even Namco, it's Bandai. Bandai bought Namco.
I mean, right. So it's just like, that's why we can't have Dig Dug. That's why, that's why we can't have those Galaxian, those games. Yeah. And then of course,
and the fact of the matter is too, and it's the same with a lot of people who buy the flashbacks. And my dad was one of these. He bought one of the flashbacks like really early, like Flashback 3 or something. And he was like, oh, this isn't like, and whenever you get like the Switch collection of Atari classics, and the fact of the matter is, for a lot of people, obviously Atari had some gems, but the best stuff on the system was Activision, Imagic, Parker Brothers, and these are the games that people are thinking, oh, Atari collection,
right?
And it's never going to be there,
right?
I have to admit that you're right. I hate to say that, but it's true. I mean, one of the best things that Atari brought us was the fact that they didn't, they were one of the first in the market, so they really didn't know how to treat developers, and
that was the Wild West,
right? And that's what spun off Activision, the first third party, and Magic from that, and it kept going and going and multiplying. And I think it was just kind of early days, but we owe that to them as well for kind of creating that situation. So it's
and then because a lot of people give Nintendo a hard time for their very strict things, but that was a direct response to that problem that Atari and to a much lesser extent Coleco and Intellivision were having, that led to the crash. Was just everybody and their mother is like, oh, I can make a game and publish it.
Right. Yeah. Even I mean, Quaker Oats made games for crying out loud.
At Midwest Gaming Classic, I just picked up Purina's Chase the Chuckwagon.
Yes. Right?
So
I love Spectravision and Magic and all that. I love them. But
Spectravision, I got some sitting on my desk.
I love Spectravision, but it's every game I can think of that I love mostly is by third parties, right? It's by Parker Brothers, is by. I mean, I love every single pretty much Activision game on the 2600 and a Magic game. I pretty much and
third parties were better.
Oh my God, they're amazing.
I wouldn't go so far as to say it's better. Maybe more consistent, but like still one of my favorite games is Centipede.
Right, Joust.
Space Invaders.
But those were ports.
Really
but
great.
technically
they're ports, but they're Atari games. They're not third party.
Well, but yes and no, because
Space Invaders is, but it's an Atari cartridge. It's not.
But they don't have the right. But they don't. Right. They just don't have the license to put.
Oh yeah, they still don't have the rights to put it on a flashback, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess when we're talking about the games, Phil, do you want to bring up your one screen and maybe we can go through those?
Oh, absolutely, sure.
And kind of give our thoughts.
Okay, let me grab my.
Oh, everybody's favorite, Yoomp.
Okay, when you boot up, this is what you'll see. Airball, I can't talk. Airball, Asteroids, Basketball, Battlezone, Berserk, Boulder Dash, Bristol's, Capture the Flag, Centipede, Crystal Castles, Electra Slide, Encounter, Flip and Flop, Henry's House, Hover Bubber, Lee, which is renamed, it should be Bruce Lee originally, and then Mule. Now I have this won't be shown unless you have you've expanded it with a USB drive. We'll explain that later. Millipede, a Miner 2049er, Missile Command, O'Reilly's Mine, the Seven Cities of Gold, Star Raiders 2, Wavy Navy, and Yomp. And I want to mention while I have the floor here, if you have Atari VCS paddle controller and you plug it in, the classic controller, that is the paddle classic controller, and you turn the system on, two mystery games come up: Super Breakout and what was the name of the game again, Brian?
I believe Castle Crisis,
which is
Warlords,
which is basically Warlords, and they will work with the paddle controller. But it's of note if you add a paddle game to the 400 Mini and you attempt to play it with this same controller, the paddle will not work. At least not yet.
One thing I will say, I don't have a problem with this lineup of games. There are some great games here, like Hover Bover, Miner 2049er, Boulder Dash are all fantastic games. But then you get like the stuff that you get on everything else. You've got Centipede, you've got Berserk. I mean, and I love Berserk, Battlezone, Asteroids. So it's not an exciting. It's not necessarily a bad lineup. It's just not an exciting lineup. And it is I would agree with Brian BD RetroMods that it's got a weaker lineup than some of the other minis that have come out.
I was going to add, it's the Asteroids, for instance. All these are the Atari 400, 800 versions, which we really haven't seen on a system before yet. As far as
true, but it's still. When you're talking about exciting, you're not like
maybe not for the mass public, right? Because they're like, oh, Asteroids, yeah, I know it, right? So it's
But also, if you're trying to target collectors, I want to play that version. Collectors have that version. Like me, I play a lot of my 8-bit stuff on my XEGS, and Asteroids is one that everybody has in their collection.
Yeah, I personally like the collection probably better than you, just because when I was playing it, I hadn't played half these games, and I really enjoyed like 90% of them. So I was surprised. Like I never played Bristles. That was so fun to me. I had so much fun playing that. I played it for like 25 minutes.
There are some new ones there for sure.
Yeah,
I
was surprised by that. I like the fact that you can mod it, do things to it, and add your own games, and that just kind of prolongs the longevity of the device, and I think that's cool.
Just like Phil said, if it didn't come with this USB port, it's not worth the money.
I agree.
Putting your own games on here is what gives it value. Now, yes, you can do that with a whole pile of different devices. You can do that with a Raspberry Pi, but you got to set it up and all that. I did load some ROMs on here. I didn't load the big massive collection that Phil did, but I did load some ROMs on here, and they worked with minimal fuss. And I was able to map buttons, and we could talk about the controller in a bit, but with the exception of the 5200 analog stick, and the problem being is that there is no other analog stick in the world, really, at least for gaming, that isn't auto-centering. So it's never going to feel right. No matter what you've got as a controller, it's never going to feel right.
Yeah.
And there's some other things that maybe a firmware update could help.
Well, and I think that's the thing. Like I said, I think we'll all agree. Like to Ballistic's point, I mean, I'd say half those games I had no clue they even existed. Whenever and again, I really like the Atari 8-bit line, but half those games I never saw before, and I don't know if it's because they were disc-based games and not cartridge-based or what. But
Phil's not going to bring that comment up.
You must be sadly mistaken, Poe.
I'm not going to answer that one of Poe's.
We all saw it at the same time.
But the one prior, when he mentioned the USB controller, I do agree, because when I plugged in my own USB controller that I make for the Nintendo Switch and MAME and stuff, I had those games pop up as well. So I do think it seems to be any USB controller does seem to pop in those extras. So I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say it's every single one, but how funny
is that they released something is like, if you use somebody else's controller, you get extra games.
Well, and I will say though, I think it's because a lot of the USB controllers use a lot of the same, like concepts with it. So I think they did that thinking it was going to be an Atari VCS controller. But a lot of them use those.
Idea also that they could put out different controllers with game packs built inside. Like, here's a I don't know, a different type of joystick or something, or a paddle controller. And there's 10 games built into it when you plug it in, right?
But the games that you unlock are here. They don't come from the joystick, so
Right.
I'm not sure how they do that.
I know that
They could do packs, make a USB key that looks like a floppy disk.
Yeah, right.
That you can put in the back, and then the game pack. Yeah.
I know that At Games had out a bunch of flashback USB stick systems. I have a few of them upstairs where you plug them in and it's like 5 games, but they run off of that thing, and so it was interesting. But yeah, just an idea that they could do, I guess.
But go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I was going to change the subject, but if you're going to continue.
Oh no, I was just the kind of finish what I was going to say. Because now I kind of forget after post comment there that, but I think we were talking on the game. So like, the loading of the games for the most part, if it's an Atari computer game, most of those seem to be good, and like controller wise, they work fine.
And I tried it with the USB keyboard as well. And that works well.
Yep. And it's just what seems to be the issue where, again, it's that over promise, under deliver, is just the fact that they said 5,200. And, that kind of had me excited because just for myself, I never had a 5,200 growing up. I didn't even really know what a 5,200 was until probably about 8 years ago, And
so again, at Midwest Gaming Classic, I bought myself a restoration kit for my 5,200
There you
controller.
go.
Nice.
So, but the fact that you need these are essential.
You probably should have bought 10 of them.
5,200 does not get the love. 5,200 does not get the love that it deserves.
It does.
Absolutely is a good system with a terrible controller.
Right. I want to add also, Mike, the 5,200 had absolutely the best manuals because during that time, Atari was spending so much money to hype the 5,200. So all their manuals were like 30 pages in full color. It was just crazy.
Yep.
They never made them like that again, ever. It was either red and black for like the Lynx or the Jaguar or whatever. And, made by
the
the
Lynx,
same,
the Lynx, even the Lynx boxes look like photocopies.
Yeah. But the 5,200 had the best manuals. If you collect the boxes, the manuals are just like treasure. It's fantastic.
Yeah,
there's a whole
nice.
story. There's pictures, and there's a place for your scores. That's a whole thing. And when that system died, so did that push into the consoles from there on out. I think after that died, they kind of gave up in a small way, right?
Yeah.
And as a company, and it really sucks because they just barely did the bare minimum, right? It seems like.
Well, and around that same point in time, like it was the same with the 8-bit computer manuals. Some of those are absolute gems.
Oh yeah.
And they're the oversized ones.
Yes.
So yeah, that was in that kind of like 83, 84, 85. Right. They were making a big push for to stay alive, as it were, and then Nintendo came and just blew them out of the water.
Yeah,
but that's just like the finish up, and then we'll move on to the next. It's just that, like I said, the 5,200 was such an underappreciated system that it got so much flack because almost all the games, but maybe 4 or 5, were ports of 2,600 games, at least in the commercial release. But the thing was, those were the best versions of a lot of those, and
best version of Missile Command by far,
right?
And because of that joystick,
right? And it's just it's those type of things where I was really hoping this could allow people to experience the 5,200 more to get what it deserved. And as it stands currently,
it still may.
I mean, again, it could get some firmware updates to help, but I mean, I really struggle with it because you got to, like, the settings, like, you can map, which we'll talk about that a little more too later, but it's just every game you got to map everything. It's not like you can just do an overall general setting and do that. So,
well, I wanted to talk about something.
I'm seeing post comment.
You know what? I'm gonna ban him. I'm gonna ban you guys, man. This is supposed to be a PG show. I tell these guys before they get on here, they got to be PG, but I can't ban you guys.
Mr. Post Style, I love you. That's all I've got to say. We're like
a
one-track mind. I love you.
And you know what? I got to give him a break because his boy and we got to take a break and acknowledge his son, Dave, today. He went to the service and he swore in today. And we want to thank Dave for going into the Air Force today. And I know not only is that a big step for him, but it's also a big step for Poe, because I know what it's like to be an empty nester, and it's going to be a little hard for him and his wife to have that one less
transition.
Mouth. Yeah, it's a little bit of a transition period, but like I told him on his Facebook, hey man, let him leave the nest and fly. He'll come back. He'll fly back.
Yeah, and
I don't know. That's one of my biggest fears is once my kids leave, they come back.
Oh
no. But I posted the same thing on his Facebook. I said, it's a bittersweet moment, but you've got to be super duper proud.
It's such an honor just to have a child that goes into the service. Period. That's just fantastic. Did
I say Air Force?
Honorable.
Yes, it was Air Force. Yeah, you said Air Force.
Okay.
I said service, but I didn't know. But no, that's great. That's great news. I was going to say Mr. Postal was one of my first friends on YouTube that I talked to, and just an awesome guy. He's been on my channel a few times, and he's just amazing.
He is. He's been
a
great friend.
Father, apparently, too.
And I can't wait till like I said, he wasn't on here when we started talking about the reunion show. I can't wait. I think we're going to have that on the 30th. Is that right? It
looks like it.
Yep. We're going to have that on the 30th. So that's going to be, and we're going to have Dr. Scott. And so that's
be all 5 of us.
Yeah, be all 5 of us. It's going to be fun. But let's get back to the 400 Mini. I want to talk about an aspect that we haven't talked about, and one of the aspects that really excited me, and it's not ready yet. I think it might be. I may be a little bit optimistic, maybe too optimistic on this. It has, when you want to expand, what you have to do is you have to get a USB stick and you have to format it in FAT32. And when you stick it in the 400 Mini, it adds 400 basic automatically onto the USB. And if you highlight it and run it, you can actually run basic on the 400 Mini, just like you would if you were turning on a 400. And you're
gonna dig up those old magazines and type in all the code.
I subscribed to all. They were called Compute magazines. They were called Compute. At least the ones I subscribed to, they were called Compute. And I didn't have a disk drive.
Next month's issue, it would have the corrections for the code.
Exactly. Yeah. And I didn't have a disk drive. I had a tape drive. And so I would type them in. I'd spend all the time, typing in. And then, I'd have to go through the process of saving and loading and all that. But yeah, it was, I had a blast doing all that. But the problem is it has a virtual disk built within it, and there's no other disk. It's a limited size, I'm assuming. I haven't filled it up or anything. I just kind of did some small test programs just to test it. And there's no way, like, you can't add any other, and it's I believe it's it's not on the SD card, I don't think. I think it's within the system. I don't know where the files are being saved. I don't know that. So my point being is, I'm hoping that at some point there's going to be a firmware update to where they can maybe like create partitions to where you can do that. Now I want to show you guys something. Some of you may have seen this, and this includes the audience. Some of you may not. I have something here called an S Drive Max.
Oh, yeah, I've got one of those. Yeah,
okay. Now, this has, I forget what kind of port this is, but this is the port that goes into the back of the 400.
The SIO port?
Yeah, okay. So, obviously, you'd have to have some kind of adapter or whatever. But what's interesting about it has a LCD screen on it, or LED screen, or whatever you call it. All right, when you turn it on, you use just a, like a little
stylus.
Thank you. I knew I knew it.
I've got one back here. Let me see.
Okay. Use a stylus, and it mimics up to 4 disk drives or a tape drive, and it has on the back of it. A slot for a micro SD card, and you can load every program that was ever made for any of the 8-bit systems on that little micro SD card on probably one of the 4 gig, small 4 gig one, and still have plenty of room left over. You know what I mean? And it's of note. I got to say, this is just a housing that I had, and it's a housing of a
Tape drive.
an Atari
Or a disc
810
drive.
disc drive, which
Yeah.
is the same color as my 400 mini. It's almost the exact same color that I have. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But the reason why I show you that is I'm wondering if maybe that someone is out there looking or thinking and go, hey, I wonder if we can get that to work with the mini somehow. I mean, with the S Drive Max somehow. Yeah, get the S Drive Max to work with the mini somehow, or if we can somehow do the firmware to work with the USB stick, so we can create virtual discs on there, so we can.
Now I know when you're recalling. I know when you're recalling software, you can recall by default up to 3 discs.
On here?
Yes.
Right now?
For games. Yeah, like if you have a game that's 3 discs, you can call that. So in BASIC, my guess is if you could write the first disc and then write the second disc and write the third and have those as 3 separate files, you could call them all up to play.
Yeah, because some of the Atari games used more than 3 discs, and I think by like Mike said, by default, if it's a game that had 3 discs to it, it'll work fine within the current GUI interface. But if you're wanting to load a game that had more than 3 floppy disks to it, then you have to go in and type in the commands,
mess with
it.
I was gonna add. I actually did a review of the C64 Mini with my friend Valley Alley, maybe a year and a half ago or something on the channel, and one thing that I found was so cool was I mean, again, half the games I didn't know, and they were fantastic. And one thing that we did, his friend who goes by the name Chris he leaves comments on Ferg's Atari 2600 podcast, kind of like I do, and he lives here locally as well as Adam. But so we actually loaded a program on here that he made in the early 80s for the Commodore, and it worked great. And that game hadn't been played in like 35, 40 years, apparently. And that was one of the really cool things about it to me, was just, as a computer geek and a gaming fan, and just allowing Adam to do that, and just the wave of emotions over his face was just insane. So we were able to play some games that were made 40 years ago and hadn't never been played before. So that was really a shining moment of this for me, was that I could do that. And I guess you can here as well. But yeah, I actually did hear, I've heard some like rumors that they are working on software management application for that.
That would be amazing.
I've heard a little bit, but I can't. I can't even say who said it, but I heard something's being done right now. So
and again,
you heard it here. BCB said it.
Well, and the reality is like if it's selling well, obviously they're going to support it, right? But I mean, I think, and that's going to be the key, is just how well does this sell overall, for them to keep putting more time and money into it ultimately. And again, on their other minis, they have done firmware updates to them, so I think it's very likely we'll see a firmware, at least 1 or 2 maybe at some point in time. But again, they're a business out to make money, and if they're not selling enough units to justify putting those resources to it, it may or may not get resolved. So
I was going to add, Brian, that really Atari hasn't even made money yet. They're actually still in the red. So that's why I'm excited about the 2600 Plus and the 400 Mini, because it opens up possibilities, right? We might see a Jaguar Mini or a Lynx 2.0 or a Lynx Mini or something. And I'm excited about that, because I think if they are popular, they'll keep making more of these.
And I would say that for systems like that weren't super, super popular, but definitely have a reputation and they're just unachievable otherwise. Like if you're going out to buy a Jaguar now, good luck. I'm so lucky I bought one when I bought one. I would not be able to afford one now. They're like $500.
$700, yeah.
Yeah, but if they came out with a Jaguar Mini that you could load games on, and even load like CD games on through a hard drive. What a no-brainer purchase.
Yeah, for like $130. Also have the ability to maybe load your own stuff on it, so you can play some homebrews. There's a lot of great Jaguar homebrews out there.
I know, I've reviewed a few.
Still being made, yeah. And so it's exciting. But I just really hope it does sell well. I would like, not only that, but from a financial side, I would like Atari to actually be in the black again. So
if they're in the black, maybe they start including power bricks with their systems.
Yeah.
But no, to your point though, I mean, I would
hold it in, Mike. Hold it in.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
But what I'd actually hope, and again, I know we're going off topic, and then so I'll say this, and then we'll get back on topic. But like, I love the whole. I mean, I would love to see a new Jaguar system, because to the point that the console itself is just becoming so out of reach for so many people, that like, who wants to put $500 down for a loose one?
But what games are going to be on it when they release it? That's the question.
Bubsy.
That's right. They could. I mean, I would hope if they do go that route, and it's because they own Atari Age, that they make it like a 2600 plus, where you can actually put because you are getting new cartridges, where like this made sense, because you don't see like physical cartridges being made for the most part. I mean, I think we might have one or two homebrew games on
Escape is a great it's Atari 800, but Escape's a great 8-bit computer homebrew.
But I mean, overall though, that's not an area that you see making a bunch of cartridges. I mean, even with the 5200, I mean, there is some homebrews, but they're not as being made physically, where the Jaguar, even the
I've got a stack like this of 5200 homebrews. I've got like a dozen of them.
Yeah, but I guess when I'm comparing it to the other Atari systems.
Well, if you can't compare it to like 2600 and 7800, because they're obviously the hugest.
Right.
But like Video 61 makes a lot of 5200 homebrews. Now they need to learn how to print a manual that will fit into their box, because they give you like a laminated paper laminated 8.5 by 11 manual, and then a box that just fits a cartridge. I'm like, why'd you laminate? Just fold it and put it in the bloody box for me. Come on.
I was surprised about Atari, because the XP games that they released, the standard editions, don't come with any manuals. I was like, so it's just an empty box in the game? That seems like
they have a little sleeve. There's a little sleeve for the game.
That's it, right.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, for that price, you would expect at least a 3-page manual, something,
Something,
but
yeah.
I was like, that's kind of chintzy.
Yeah.
Not to stick to it, but to move back to it, the 400.
Yes.
Why don't we talk about this?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so it's the CX. It's called the CX stick. It is a USB stick. It looks like your standard CX40 kind of stick. Yep, that's the box for it down there that the PCB has. But it's got, your back and your
it's home and menu.
Home and menu buttons on the front there. It's got a little button on the corner. It's got the regular button. It's got the joystick. And here's my issue with it. I really appreciate what they tried to do. Is they tried to put more buttons on here and retain the look of a CX40. But the top, like northwest, south, and east, they're buttons. Now, there are several ways that people hold their joystick. They usually hold it like this, and they might play like this. Or one that I do is I kind of wrap a finger around and do that. Or a lot of the times, now that I've got big hands, I'll play like this. But the problem is, if you're doing any kind of, you will accidentally hit these buttons.
If you're anchoring your wrist or the side of your hand in any way, you're in big trouble, because you're going to accidentally press a button, and 90% of the time you're going to get out of the game.
The default mapping for some of them is to restart your game.
It will restart your game, absolutely. I did that
now,
today.
Now, you can remap this, and what I actually ended up doing is I went in and I remapped for a couple of games I was playing, and basically removed what these defaulted to.
Mm-hmm.
and then I don't have any problem.
You know what's crazy about that mic though is whenever I was doing my first impressions, it was like in real time, and I was just filming myself in real time doing it. And I actually I had that happen once, but it never happened to me again. I'm not sure why, but maybe it's how I hold the joystick. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think
without a doubt,
it
I think it's how everyone holds it. Because like again, if you're holding it like this and playing, I mean, you're gonna roll over and hit those. I mean,
see if you didn't have those like big old fat hands,
right? Yeah, right.
I do have big man hands, but again, the way around it is you put your thumb on top, because this is how my dad used to always play Space Invaders.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, and we couldn't do that, so I would play like this. But now that I'm bigger and my hands are bigger, playing like this, you'll never get anywhere close to those buttons.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me show you something.
I was watching Phil's live stream today, and he did it like 4 or 5 times. He did it twice in Dig Dug. He did it a couple times in Miss Pac-Man.
I'll show you why. Let me show you why. I have the controller here. When I play, I anchor my right hand like this, so I don't really have a problem with my right hand. But when I fire, I usually anchor my thumb like this. So my thumb is hitting, this is the button I'm hitting every time.
Yeah.
It's this one every time. So I think if I were to remap the button for that to be neutral or not to do anything, then I would be okay. But it's kind of a hassle to have to do that.
And I will say, too, that this is not the actual joystick itself. I don't find to be as nice as a new CX40 Plus.
It's stiffer.
And, well, okay. No, actually, this one has a bit more play.
I think it's stiffer.
Than the CX40 Plus? The one that came out with the 2600 Plus? Okay, I disagree. I think it's got a little more throw. But I will say this, because I really like the CX40 Plus. And it's stiff, but that's what I remember. And that's because I grew up with a light. I grew up with a CX. I grew up with a light sixer. Now, Phil, I have noticed, and you had the same comment on the 2600 Plus. You're like, oh, this joystick is stiff. I prefer the Hyperkin. And that's because you got your 2600 in 1978. You had a heavy sixer with the CX10 joystick, which did have more throw.
There you go.
Yeah.
Right.
But,
and to Poe's point, taking my thunder there, Poe, is just, again, I agree with Mike. I mean, obviously, I know they had to go this route, right? I mean, like, they wanted to keep that authentic design. But when you do compare it to, like, the C64 Mini, where they took a little bit more liberties to it, you know, when you see where they put the buttons, you know, on it, like, I feel like they could have done that to this and just maybe did them all up on the top here. I mean, you already had the 2 buttons here. I think you could have put those additional buttons up here that would have hopefully helped keep you from accidentally hitting them, or just, even though it wouldn't be the exact size, make this maybe just a little bit of a bigger square, or just add a little bit underneath or something to then add those buttons, you know, with it. But I mean, to Poe's point, though, like, I prefer this joystick over the one that came with the 400 Mini.
I mean, if you're going to have 2 buttons on the front, why not just put 25 like the Jaguar? Right. Just fill it up with buttons, right? Yeah. At that point, it's already not original looking. Go ahead and put some more. Put the whole row right there, and then be done.
Right. And that's
just make this part just free range playing.
Yeah, because the reality is that people have different play styles. You got some people that'll hold it with the thumb like this, or you hold it like this, and you got some who'll like literally take it like a lever, you know, like going all over with it like this. I mean, there's just
we call those children.
Yeah. Or like Phil mentioned, and I can completely get it, because as I'm holding mine here too, it's like, yeah, I can see why he's hitting that.
You roll the thumb,
because how I hold it myself, I could see myself hitting that. So
now you guys are putting it in my head. I'm going to do it all the time.
Yeah.
But then also, I mean, and I know there's also issues with this. I mean, I've not noticed it as much myself, but again, I think it's what your play style is, where you're getting misreads, and it's because there's no nub. Like when you think about the original Atari controllers, you had a little nub there to kind of help with the stick, and with that, you don't have that, and so therefore you're hitting the oh geez, Poe. I see everyone else's face there laughing. I'm like, oh, what now? So
unless this is on a time delay, he hasn't left yet.
Yeah.
No. Phil. He said, "I'll see myself out" because of his previous comment.
I saw that. I know. I saw him. I'm not posting that on the screen. I'm not posting that on the screen. This is a PG show. We don't do that.
So that's my whole thing. It's like, you already had to do extra liberties here. Like, I think you could have readjusted better than trying to do what you did. I mean,
yeah, but what I would like to say is, and Jerome makes a good point, because collectors are the prima donnas that they are. There would have been complaints if this didn't look like a proper controller, and I can appreciate what they tried to do. I agree with Brian that if they had taken some liberties and put some buttons maybe along the top, I don't think you put them along the bottom because maybe people are holding it like this. But along the top, you could put another 3 or 4 buttons there and not have to worry about people accidentally hitting the wrong thing.
And they could have, and they could have kept them black just like they did here. That made them real tiny to not really make them noticeable.
If they would have just had the mind link out back in the day, we could just use our brains and we wouldn't need these dang controllers, right?
Yeah, well, we wouldn't need systems either. It'd all be up there.
Yeah. But then with that too, like, so the other thing, because again, they're all cross compatible, is just, I actually like using the Amiga controller that came with the A500 on it. I mean, this has actually kind of been my more, as I've been testing it.
And he swears by that controller.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like atrocious in the sense of the shape, but I mean, but it actually.
I've never been a big fan of that controller, but at least you're not hitting the wrong buttons.
Well, and that's it.
I mean, it looks like a console that if Tiger Electronics put one out, that's what it would look like, right? What you held up there.
But then the other thing to keep in mind though with the controllers is that, I mean, it does have, which is a positive and a negative at the same time. It's just, it does have a huge compatibility with other USB-based controllers. But your results may vary a little bit. And what I mean by that is, this isn't like MAME, this isn't like Raspberry Pi, where you can truly configure each button specifically how you want it. I mean, it's still going with a layout that's very similar to an Xbox or like an Atari VCS controller, things like that. Like, it doesn't, like, even though, yes, you can map buttons, you don't have the freedom to truly make each button it's what you want it to be. It's just, okay, B, what it sees as the B button will be this, but that B button may not be the same button location on your USB joystick, so
there'll be some trial and error, but you can basically get it to what you want it to be.
Right.
I was going to say that we should make ourselves say 2 great things about it, before we end for the night or whatever. So just to even it out, because what happens is, with these kind of conversations, it can sound really negative to a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's, you know what? I do also want to, I wouldn't mind going around the horn, and we kind of talked about this a little bit in the backstage. I wouldn't mind going around the horn and kind of giving a letter grade on it, because I think people might be surprised. Like, it's our job. This is a podcast where we take something that people are meant to enjoy and we nitpick it. Mm-hmm. And that's our job, right? We're like, okay, this isn't perfect. But I give this thing a B. I am not upset that I purchased it. Even the controllers, like, for what they're trying to do, I appreciate it. Is it the best it could be? No, but it's a B effort. If this was my student, I would give the 400 a B. Granted, I would give like the C64 Mini, that would get an A. But this gets a B, and a B's not bad.
Okay, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of with Mike again. Yeah, obviously I'm critiquing it on things, but again, kind of like the Atari 2600 Plus, it has its place. It had a specific
Hmm.
goal. I think overall it met the goal. Now, I think I would say it's a B as well. I mean, if I wanted to get extremely critical, I would maybe go to B minus, and it's only because of the 5200 part that's just not fleshed out great yet. But overall, I don't think it's a bad option.
No.
If you want to, if you like these mini consoles and you want to get, experience the 8-bit line of stuff fairly cheaply. Now, granted, yes, there's other ways to play this stuff. I mean, you'll hear it time and time again that you can just get a RetroPie, or you can just put an emulator on your PC. But there's something to be said with these, because
But
the reality,
it looks so cute.
they look good. But the other thing is I hear this from people a lot, and I'm kind of guilty of it. You get a RetroPie that you have 50,000 games on it, literally, you're going to waste how many hours just to figure out what you want to play. And that's why people still like to have these, because it's a more limited library with a focus to easily go and play some games. Because again, you get those collections, which is nothing wrong with them, that are just these huge compilations on a RetroPie that now you're just cycling through like, man, what am I actually going to play today?
Yeah.
So but overall, I can't complain about it. I mean, obviously, this is for a specific group of people that like these mini consoles. If you've never been a fan of these since the good old regular NES Mini that started
this one isn't going to change your mind.
This isn't going to change your mind by any means. But I will say, though, just have reasonable expectations going into it and understand there are some issues with the joystick that comes with it. And if you're hoping to play Atari 5200 games, you may be a little disappointed, because you can play them to some extent, but there's still some room for improvement.
The vast majority of 5200 games you could play with a digital stick. Like, you don't need the analog.
You're right, except the problem is it's the way the emulation,
way it emulates
it's
it.
It's trying to compensate analog with the digital, and it's not giving the same.
But you do have all those sliders. You can adjust.
You
can basically operate as digital.
There's those sliders, but again, it's definitely trial and error, and you got to do it on every game. It's not like once you set it, it's the same for all 5200 games.
Yeah.
So you're doing that every time you open.
Yes, you're doing it for every game.
Yeah. So.
Okay, what do you think, Ballistic Coffee Boy?
Strangely enough, I've got to agree with these guys. I give it a B right now. When I'm drawing my first impressions, I gave it an A minus. I love the design of it straight away. I loved half of the games I never played before, like Bristles and Wavy Navy, which I freaking love. I love that game. It's amazing. I was like, I didn't even know what it was. So, because there's so many 800 games, but I was taken away with that. So I gave it an A minus in my first impressions. After going through it the past week or two since that video, I would have to land at a B as well. I agree with everything these guys have said. I was disappointed there was no manual in there. The 60 whatever 100,000 page user manual that's like this thick or whatever. I feel like we needed that. It wasn't that big, but it was, I feel like we needed that. And
but literally, I think it is a 40 page. I think it's like 30
it's really
or 40
big.
pages. Yeah.
Yeah. I posted it on Atari Newsline. I was talking about it, going through it. And it's everything, every question you have is answered in there. And if you didn't have it, you have to go to look to find it. And so, I mean, that's one thing about this system too. It's not for sale. From what I understand, it's not for sale at Best Buy or anywhere. Right? They have to go on Atari.com or some website and buy it.
Or Amazon.
Amazon.
So actually, the only one of these kind of mini computer systems that ever made it to the stores was the C64. That's the only one I recall, anyway.
Right.
Yeah, because like GameStop got those and stuff. Yeah, because I remember buying mine for I think it was Black Friday for like $25 or something. So.
My kids got me one for Christmas. They bought it at Walmart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and yes, Mr. Postal, I got my jacket 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I'll never hear them. He'll be whining. And
I'll
he'll
have
be
to talk to
whining.
him about it and find out where it is. We'll have to talk to Ashley on the Discord, the Atari person we talked to. But yeah, it's I think I would give it a B. I feel like it should have come with a manual. I feel like it should have been a little easier for the general public to use these other ways. But it's also telling where they're selling it. It's not for sale at Best Buy. You have to go look for it. So because of that, I do think it's more of a hobbyist device for guys like us, like you were saying, Mike. So for that, I think it's cool because you can mod it, you can add your own stuff, you can tinker with it. There are going to be updates. So yeah, I would give it a B. I wouldn't even go to a B minus. I think I'm good at a B, just from everything I've seen so far. But it's yeah, and I'm of course I'm gonna love it. I'm an Atari guy, and I love the Atari Epic computer.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, the worst Atari product's going to get a C+ from you.
Oh, maybe even a C plus. Is that what you said?
That's okay, Ballistic. You know what?
We love you. We love you.
That's absolutely right, man. That's absolutely right.
I'll give it 0.5% higher than y'all, okay? Because it's got the Fuji on it.
Well, you guys are going to be very surprised. I'm probably going to be the most optimistic of all of you. Now, I've only had it a week. But I immediately started adding games to it. And I watched Ballistic Coffee Boy's video on. I didn't realize there was a second manual. When you buy the thing, the manual is basically
quick
worthless.
Start guide. Yeah.
It's a quick start guide. It really doesn't tell you much. But there's a manual. Retro Games has a exhaustive manual online. Which was very helpful. I didn't even realize there was one. Thank you, BCB, for bringing that to my attention. Anyway, I immediately added games to it. In doing so, got the basic on there. Now, I'm going to give it. Now, as we talked in the outset, and like Ballistic mentioned, we mentioned at the onset that we agreed that this is basically a hobbyist device here, because if you're just buying it for the 25 games on there, this is not worth it. It's just not.
Yeah.
So having that in mind, it's not there. It's not there, but I'm not looking at for exactly what it is. I'm looking at for what it is and what it will be. So I think it's good for what it is now. And I think it's going to be better down the road. I think, and plus I'm looking at it from also from a programmer, computer standpoint.
I was going to say that's a big difference. Like BASIC excites you.
It does.
It's
it
neat
really does
to me, but I will never use it.
Yeah, but so that and that's an element. There were a lot of people are into that. A lot of people are into that. So,
thankfully for people like me who like to actually just play what they make.
He's a consumer. Yeah.
So I really like the potential that it has. I also that's basically my take on that. Now, before we go, I want to. Normally, it's not protocol for a channel to tell you guys where to get your games. We don't really do that on our channels. We all, 3 of the 4 of us have channels here, and we don't really normally do that. But what I'm going to do on this channel, this is the Retro Bliss gaming channel here. If you're looking for games for your 400 mini, I can tell you how to find them. I'll do a search for Atari Mania, okay? And when you find Atari Mania, go on their site, and you can download games one at a time there.
Yeah.
Okay, in bin format, and the bin formats are going to work better than the A52 formats, right, Brian?
Yeah, and that's that's exactly how I got all my 800 games. I did them one at a time.
Yep. Okay.
And so I have every single one of them.
It's only downloading ones that we physically own.
Oh, absolutely. And then, do a search on the Atari 8-bit Home Soft Collection. Okay, the home. You know about that, Brian? BCB.
Yeah.
Oh
I've used
brother! Oh my gosh! I have. Oh my gosh! I have. Of course, I own every one of the 4,000 games.
Oh yeah. Well, you get the basement, right? Or the
Oh
attic,
yeah, I had to go to all floors down to get to it, but yeah,
steel
in the Bliss
doors and
Cave.
yeah.
Yeah, it's down in the Bliss Cave. But man, yeah, I have. There's literally 4,000 games in the HomeSoft collection that you can access and play on your 400 Mini. So they're out there
That's
if you
awesome.
look. Yeah.
That
Before
makes
we
it worth it
sign
right
up.
there. That's
Oh, yeah.
4,000 games, right?
Yeah, provided you legally own them.
Of course.
I would just like to say that the Retro Bliss Gaming channel does not condone the piracy of video games.
The disclaimer.
Speaking of which, just before we say goodbye, because I know we've been on for an hour now, if anybody wants to see more of me, I will be on the Intellivision Gamer podcast at 9:45 p.m. Eastern tonight. I'll be talking about the Midwest Gaming Classic, and we'll also be looking at a game that I had a part in called Napoleonic Wars for the Intellivision.
Oh, awesome.
Cool.
So be there or be square.
The Intellivision Gamer, Casey, is amazing. He's been on
One of our podcasts.
he's been on 2 of our podcasts, brother.
Which 2? Oh yeah, you talked about the television and the Homebrew Awards. Okay, yeah, 2. You're right.
Where do we get these people, Brian? Oh my gosh.
I've been here from the start, Phil. Don't pull that on me.
Oh my gosh. I must be desperate to get these
Says
people.
the guy who accidentally restarts his Miss Pac-Man every game.
Just so he can complain about Pac-Man a little bit longer, right?
Oh my gosh,
a little
you
bit
guys.
longer.
Oh my gosh.
Miss Pac-Man is the good one.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Ballistic, don't go anywhere when we sign off, okay? So anyway, I just wanted to say that. I put that in the private chat, but I don't know if you saw it. So anyway, hey, you guys, thanks for tuning in. By the way, if it's not there, I'm going to make sure it will be at the end of the chat. Be sure to subscribe to Mike's Gaming Gala. Be sure to subscribe to Ballistic Coffee Boy, and always be sure to subscribe to Retro Bliss Gaming. And also, of note, if you need an Atari 400 Mini, there's a link in the description where you can get one. Did you know that? All right. So with that, you guys have an awesome day. And next week on the podcast, we are going to have a gentleman by the name of MC Murr on the show. And MC Murr will be showing us how to build a collection. If you want a retro gaming collection, he's going to show you how to do it on the cheap.
I'll have some input on that too. I put some of that into use this last weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's kind of the man. He's actually the reason I got into retro gaming, and we're gonna have I've never had a verbal conversation with the man, but we've had it's gonna be fireworks, you guys. We're gonna have a good time, and the guy's a character. He's an excellent dude, good guy. You're going to love it. So with that, you guys, we'll see you next week on Retro Bliss Rewind. Take care. We'll see you next time. No, not yet. Okay. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.